think it's a very low percentage that would say that booking meetings with people for after the meeting would not be an important measurement. Welcome everybody to Event Marketing Redefined. Super stoked to have you all here live. As always, thank you for showing up. Thank you for spending an hour. We're going to do our best to give you the best hour that we have. We are going to break this show up into kind of 3 quick segments today. One is I'm going to give you all some data. I'll tell you who I curated it from, where it came from, and then I'll give you some thoughts on that data. Next to that data is we're going to run into a quick conversation from an event marketer standpoint. Even if data looks a little doom, little gloom, little uncertainty, everyone's using the word uncertainty now, we're going to talk about some really tactical and things that you can do in your job from 2 standpoints. One is from a measuring standpoint, right? We're going to give you things that we believe, like a list of things that we work on with our customers to measure, that our customers measure, that people we've spoke to on this podcast measure, what kind of measurements we feel that you should be aiming to measure, right? I'll stop saying measure. Second piece of that is we're going to give you this concept of strategy over spend. And we are going to give you, in a time like this, uncertainty, if budgets get cut, if you're being asked to produce more, I still believe that strategy is more important than your spend. And regardless what your spend is, you can utilize and leverage that capital to the best of your ability to drive results. So we're going to give you some tip, tricks, know-hows, but very try to be tactful.
We've got
and
a
give you
whole bunch of ideas lined up,
yes,
in ways that you can make a bigger impact with less spend for sure. And of course, we've got the chat. We're all here to network. I would love, as we're talking about these 3 different components today, chime in the chat, tell us what you're doing, share some ideas, right? Because it's always good to have some inspiration from each other.
Not to revert backwards, but Harry going to the ice cream, just plain vanilla with chocolate syrup and creamy peanut butter. I mean, absolutely.
Oh, peanut butter on vanilla ice cream is
I'm excited.
divine.
Excited thinking about this. We'll have to do an ice cream show. I can just sit here, eat ice cream, and give it a 1 to 10. All right, let's go to data. So I was reading a bunch of different data from 2 people, both I really love. One is Nicola Kastner. She runs ELX Group. One from Jessica Sabila, right? She runs the Exhibitor Advocate. They both released data over a certain period of time. I was reading the data and then I sort of trying to wrap my mind around it. I kind of summarized it and then I put some thoughts to it. I created a LinkedIn post about it. So I'll kind of walk you through their data and let's start there. So Nicola Kastner put data out and essentially it was discussing this concept of comparing 2019 to today in the event world. And basically saying that costs are up roughly 38%, which is it's high and it's a lot. Some highlights of that, right? Again, 2019 to 2025, difference in cost increase in events. Room blocks are up 30%. AV production costs are up 20 to 40. Food and beverage up 45 to 55. Airfare up 25. Shipping and freight up 25. Labor is up 25 to 40. And custom fabrication and event build up 15 to 25%. Now, secondary, let's go to Jessica's information. Jessica's information and data was different. It was comparing rates from 23 to 24 and the increase from 23 to 24. Okay. So Nicola's was a comparison generally across the industry from 2019 to 2025. Jessica's was a exhibitor and also just general exhibition rates data from 23 to 24 and what that increase looked like. So let's go to hers. Some highlights. Electrical labor is up 16%. Material handling is up 2.2%. Seems fair and light, but I'll get back to a point on that after. Booth furnishings up 5%. Hanging sign labor up 8%. And then she gave a nice breakdown, I thought, of this. The top 5 most expensive cities to exhibit in the United States are in order: Philly, New York, Boston, Chicago, San Diego. I know none of you are falling out of your seats there. Top 5 least expensive cities to exhibit in order: Atlanta, Seattle, San Antonio, Nashville, and Houston. Okay. So long story short, if you have any style of trade show event or you're putting on an event, Atlanta, Seattle, San Antonio, Nashville, Houston are good places to go from a cost perspective if it works with your customer base, if it works with sort of your ecosystem, right? So of all these, yeah, they're from Jessica's side of thing with the exhibition cost, they are up. The one that struck me was that material handling was only up 2.2, right? Material handling is notorious for being wildly expensive, not transparent, on and on and on. So I did a little bit of research. And again, Jessica's research was 23 to 24. Okay. So I went back and looked. And in 2019, material handling, the average cost per pound was roughly around $1 in 2019, right? You're talking nationwide, you're putting it all together as roughly $1. The current average in the United States today, 25, is $2. It's doubled. So what I want to highlight here is a couple things. And specifically, I'll stick with material handling is actually, no, hold on. Let me go backwards here a little bit. Room blocks, AV costs, food and beverage, venue, airfare, shipping, freight, labor, electrical, material handling, booth furnishing, sign labor. You put all this stuff together of what it takes you all as event marketers, event managers, directors of events to put on your events. And this all sounds like, holy shit, our costs are now through the roof. What am I supposed to do? Right? Well, you're hearing things like inflation, uncertainty, transition in power in the United States, a lot of geopolitics, unsettling, travel restrictions. I know these are all things that you're hearing, right? Well, let me give you a little bit of a rundown on some of the correlation I'm putting together with this data so you can understand it better. In 2019, I remember it very well from being in the industry. Many of these costs and these problems, electric, material handling, rigging, internet, right? Let's just start with those. These were already problems. They were already being discussed at industry events, and they were already complaints and a bit of a sore subject on the costs because they were high. They weren't as transparent as they should be, and they were already a problem. What ends up happening now is we go through COVID, we've hit an inflation period, and now it's gotten even worse. So problems that could have been solved back in 2016, 17, 18, 19 have not been solved. And now we're kind of getting exponentially piled on. Room blocks, food and beverage being up 45 to 55% is the food and beverage being up that much. I don't fully understand it. To be honest with you, it's not really my background or my space. I'm not seeing that at restaurants or dining or different places like that. But from food and beverage, I understand it's a different game in the hotels. Shipping and freight, I mean, they are sucking wind themselves. I have friends in the freight industry and they are really sucking wind. There's a lot of issues in that industry right now. They're taking a beating. Room blocks, I don't know. I probably think that hotels trying to recoup a little bit of money, but now we're kind of getting out of that post-COVID period. But last kind of two thoughts on this data to leave you with is one is that none of us can control any of these costs, right? I think there are certain things that you can do. I'm a huge advocate of when you're going to your trade shows, we'll call them trade shows, right? Just that. And you are paying $8,000 for internet, or you have a $170,000 drayage bill, or you have someone charging you $7,000 to rig a simple sign. You need to go to your association. Like, I cannot save you. Your exhibit house cannot save you. Your partners can. We have the Freemans, the GESs, that they're not listening to us. They've never listened to us. And frankly, they don't have to. They don't have to listen to us, right? You have to go to your association. You have to go to who you paid to buy that concrete or lease it for 3 days and to be at that show and to sponsor and partner with and say, this is absolutely ridiculous. These are wild costs. How can you justify these to me, right? I would get other exhibitors that are having the same problem. It's your only really course in that. It's the action you can take in that space. Yeah, so Harris Row here, I'm going to a show this month and was going to rent a 32-inch monitor. It was $1,700 for 3 days. So he bought one for $200. Here's what I would tell you. I'm not going to bang on Freeman and GES and the contractors and the convention centers and the associations. But my grandfather used to tell me, a kid smells like shit, it's shit. Okay. So when you're talking drayage, when you're talking hanging sign labor, when you're talking $8,000 for internet, I'm pretty sure Starlink's like $50 or like $100 a month at this point, right? So decide for yourself, right? But I'm not going to lend any more time to it. But essentially, I would be going to your association. They are responsible to you. They are in those negotiations. They know what you're being charged. You go to your association and say, how am I getting charged $8,000 or $4,000 to rig a simple sign? They know. They can't look at you and be like, oh, wow, that's crazy. I had no, they know. So go to them. That's your outlet. Now let's talk about things that we can control here. A1 is not treating your event program like a cost of doing business, because costs have gone up, right? So costs are going up. So just showing up just to show up, not really valid anymore. Well, not that it's not valid. It's even less advantageous than it used to be, because you're getting the same, you're paying more by Nicola with ELX's calculation, 38% more. But what are the results that you're getting? So if you're treating it as a cost of doing business and not treating it strategically and not coming with a set approach that's curated to your customers, that's driving pipeline and ROI, you're just paying 38% more for no results. So now you're an even more expensive cost of doing business at this point in time. All right. So that's the data. This is kind of some correlations I drew together. I would say don't let data like this make you feel like these are new problems, or make you feel like costs are just rising, or it's a new president, or inflation, or those things are all, they're all in the batter at this point. But many of these things have been a problem for 6, 7, 8 years. I've been listening to complaints and looking at data and hearing people bellyache about drayage, internet, rigging, right? All of these things for years. This was a problem. This was in discussions with exhibitors, associations, contractors. This has been being discussed. This is not a new problem. So I don't want anybody reading data and thinking that this is some kind of new thing going on. It's been compounded on because it's a problem that wasn't fixed. All right. So my viewpoint is always half glass full. So what, as event marketers, being a steward of a corporate event program, a budget, having to drive results, having to really accomplish something, what can you do given this climate and given what's in front of you and what you have control over? Well, we want to give you a couple things. I think measuring is now more important than ever. Measuring is tough. Calculating ROI is tough. We've done a lot of shows. We've had a lot of conversation around it. My advice is, though, you need to start measuring. Measure something, measure anything. You need to measure to tell a story to get buy-in. Executives want to see some form of measurement. They want to understand some form of data. It could be super simple, or it could be detailed and complex. But in these times, people get worried about what? Getting laid off, losing resources, having budget stripped from them. If you measure, if you strategize and you measure and you show results, you have a fighting chance. So it's the only thing that is controllable, right? The best event marketers that I know and the best companies that we work with, they are driving and pushing to not just look cool on the show floor, or not just show up and have a nice booth build or a good event go on. They are looking to push and drive a measurable result, or at least a positive outcome influence towards company initiatives. They know that they need to move and shake, and they need to move the needle. So let's do some measurement stuff here. So the way I kind of broke this out for what you can measure, right? I can't go too far down the rabbit hole because I'm not in your CRMs. I don't know the size of your company, how your company's matrix, the verticals, the size. There's so many things that go into how you eventually measure, right? But what I want to give you is things that I think you can measure. So then you can then decide, okay, Matt and Coty just gave us 16 things to measure. I could pluck 3 of these. I know I can do this by myself. I don't need clearance. I don't need to get with the VP of sales. I'm just going to do it. So I have it. So the way I broke it out is leading and lagging measurement, right? And then I did a little bit of like pre-event and at event. So let's start with leading, because obviously that's first, right? Things you can measure that are leading, that are pre-event. This is prior you getting to the event. I think 2 simple things that really matter, that indicate will you have a successful show and can show some like positive momentum per se, and then can be tracked to the lagging. One is meetings booked. How many meetings did you book? right? Whether those are demos, whether those are actual meetings, whether those are executive, you know, it's all different types of meetings that you would have. But how many meetings did you book prior, right? Second is you would call like target accounts, RSVPs, and invites. So a lot of you have major big target accounts at these big trade shows, and you should. And you should be targeting big accounts. And I call them whales. Who's the whales that you're looking to get in front of and land? How many of them RSVP'd to come to a demo, to come to a dinner, to come to your talk, to go to an experience, right? How many did you invite? How many RSVP'd? I think those are good metrics to have, because if I'm an executive and you give me, we're just talking leading measurement, pre-event. Hey, we booked 40 meetings and we invited 30 target accounts to this thing, and 10 said yes. Okay, now we're starting with measurement, moving into where we're going. So let's stick with leading measurement. And Coty, jump in whenever you want, or interrupt me if you have one here.
No, you're on a roll here. I love it.
Okay. At the event. So this is while you're at the event, things I think you can measure. Demo and engagement, completed and attended. A lot of people have demos. A lot of people have engagements, meaning products or things that they are showing or something that they are taking people through. How many people attended, showed up, completed it, sat with you, however you want to label it for what you're doing. I think that's important. You can track your total visitors. I think this to a degree is important, because it's not like this metric that's you're gonna show somebody and be like, oh, we had X amount of visitors, because they can pick it apart. But if you have other metrics with it, we booked this many meetings, we got this many meaningful engagements, and we had this many RSVPs and meetings booked after. The total visitors with those is a really nice measurement going forward. Qualified leads, obviously a major one, right? Qualified leads, not badge scan, not there's probably a better saying for it, but just scanning everybody's badges, right? But qualified leads is people you've had discussions with, is people that you can identify, is people that have a need, is people that you can grade them. Meetings had. How many meetings did you have? Right? And that's a big one. And meetings, for everybody, they come in all shapes, forms, and sizes. It doesn't mean that they showed up at your booth and you sat down. I've had meetings where I'm grabbing a coffee down one of the aisles, and then I see somebody, and whether it's a catch up or someone I know or introduced to, and then we go and sit and talk in one of the halls or in one of the engagement areas. It's happened. So meetings had.
Yeah, I think it's important to clarify too. So meetings booked is something that's been booked either in advance of the event or from a conversation booked after the event. But meetings had is really that deeper conversations where you've had a chance to connect with that person. And it might, just like you said, it might not be actually in the booth. Maybe it's during a happy hour or a networking event or something else that's happening. Maybe you're waiting to go into a session, or you're connected with somebody during a session, whatever it might be. But that's a qualified meeting per se, because you're starting the conversations and you're connecting.
Love that.
I do want to chime in. So Adrienne put in the chat, she said, how are you measuring or collecting data from your show activations? So this is a really common problem. I feel like everyone does it differently. So for me to answer and say exactly how to do that, it really depends on your business and what you're willing to invest in, what type of CRM you have, but also the staff that you have on the floor. And I'm sure so many other, listeners here can chime in on how they're actually measuring and collecting. Some are more complicated, and some just needs to be as simple and quick and effective as possible, right? So a badge scan leads to quickly, grading it, A, B, and C type of lead. Then the sales team knows what to do with those A and B leads, but then the C leads, the marketing team knows what to do. And is it a badge scanner leading into a spreadsheet that, somewhere it's notes are being taken and then put into the CRM? I mean, there's so many different ways you can splice or dice that, but measuring it, how you measure it, is an important component of the figuring out the metrics that matter and how you can actually then track them.
Agreed. All right, let me jump into this. Keep going with this list here. So we said pre-event, right? So pre-event, I laid out it's meetings booked, it's your target accounts, RSVP, MVP. So at the event, as I'm rolling through here, one of the things I think is important is booking meetings on the show floor for after, I think, is a huge one. It's literally my favorite. I think it's such a huge indicator. Who do you talk to that goes to a trade show, regardless of the vertical, what you do, what you're trying to accomplish? I think it's a very low percentage that would say that booking meetings with people for after the meeting would not be an important measurement, right? And I also think when you create it as a KPI, it becomes a challenge. Stop talking to people and having qualified conversations and then not setting up next steps and getting that. Ask for the meeting, carry that conversation. I think it's a really good metric. Coty, you brought this one up when we were preparing for this and putting this all together. Qualified touch points. I love that you said this. I think it's vague, but I think it allows people to do it's good in a good way vague where people can do what they want with it. So just walk
Yes.
people through what you mean by qualified touch points because I love this point.
I love talking about this. So remember, I'm the marketing mind. I'm looking at, how we're collecting data in and tagging them. So when you're imagining qualified touch points, it's seeing somebody on the floor and having a quick conversation with them versus having a meeting with them or catching up with them in a happy hour, just like we already talked about earlier. But those qualified touch points, that is just these little micro moments that happen in the relationship, the lifetime of the relationship that you and your company have with this person. So one touch point that happens on the trade show floor is one part of a big vision of what we want to see as a
Yeah.
catalyst to driving a conversion, right? So if at any point you can figure out a way, or at least for what we do in our CRM, we track activity. So it's not, an attribution model where, okay, lead comes in from trade show and it's closed, and we can say, oh, that's what was a qualified touch point. It was much more of, I saw them at the trade show, we connected, right? So there's an activity of that. Then they emailed us to talk about this. They visited our website to do this, depending on the technology that you have. For us, it's, we love having all of you come join our
Yeah.
podcast, right? If there's moments there, for any of you that are new here listening today, you're going to get an email from me personally later, just thanking you for being there. That's a qualified touch point. We got a chance to connect, new conversation, get to know you a little bit. So all of these different qualified touch points really start to build a story of the lifetime of the relationship that you have.
And I think, Coty, with this, just so everybody remembers, when we get to the lagging measurements, I'm going to tie this one into the lagging on where I think it's important down the line. All right. A few more here. One is who Coty already touched on, but it's like lead scoring, categorization, and grading leads. I think this is really, really important. Categorizing leads is being able to distribute them really quickly. Like, does this go to sales? Does this go to marketing? Does this need to be booked for a meeting right away? Where does this kind of sit? Grading leads, meeting new people, right? Lead scoring. The grading of leads, I think, is interesting. It's really just saying, are you going to give me A, B, C, or D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Lead scoring, I've seen some pretty complex system. I think my favorite person that told me about theirs was John Wolf with Lenovo. And John talks about that they have this like touch point system to where, you have an account and then when he touches them at an event, he gets a certain point total based on what they do to go to it. So that when they go to the CRM, you could have a point total that equals up to 30 or 40, and they know that the event adds up to 20 of those points, right? So it's really, it's more
Yes,
complex
yep,
than the
a
average, but it's
point-based system does work a lot for those that use like Salesforce.
yes. And if you have big teams, because your sales is touching them, your
Hmm.
marketing is touching them, your events are touching them. So it's never just this is what drew the lead in, this is what sold the lead. There's a lot of journey going on for people. So I think the lead scoring is a great way to do it. Last one on this at the event. The tale is old as time, net promoter and brand sentiment. But, and stay with me here, I think the key to doing net promoter and brand sentiment measurement at your show lies in the question. It lies in the question that you are asking, right? What do you want to know? Don't do some manila BS question that gives you manila BS data, right? So if sticking with Lenovo with John, just from my conversations with John, hopefully he doesn't mind me sharing, but Lenovo has typically been known for producing product, but they also have service. And that is what they're selling a lot of times with what John's working on at their events. So when you're talking about brand sentiment, and if you're asking a question, it would lie somewhere in trying to understand, do they know that they're there selling services? Are they aware that they have these services? Would they consider them for these services, right? That is the sentiment that when you're going to a show and you're touching 2,000 people, 1,000 people, 500, whatever, that's the sentiment that you would want to gain, to know. Yes, people are aware. That is true brand awareness, in my opinion. The message that we're trying to get out is that we're not just a product builder, we're also a service provider. And do people understand that? So that net promoter, brand sentiment, it lies in the question that you ask. Don't ask too many questions, and make sure that you ask very specific and good questions to give you proper data. All right. Whew, sorry,
I
I'm
just
rolling
want to
here.
pause real quick. So in the
Yeah.
chat, everyone's talking about lead retrieval. This is a hot topic, and sometimes I wish that we had just a list of all of the really great lead captures out there. But some of the gaps are the cost, right? I totally get when you're running maybe a smaller event program, it's hard to justify the cost of the bigger lead retrieval systems. And so looking at your team, looking at the capabilities, what are some of the technologies that are available to you easily to capture and then also kind of manage and grade quickly without being heavy lift? Is it, also utilize AI for data analysis post event too. But this is a hot topic. I would love to dig deeper into that, right? We talk about softwares, what's available, not only for lead capture, but then also project management. There's all these different softwares that require different costs, different investment for the different services or problems that they solve. So
Love it.
feel
All right,
free to drop in the chat what's working.
let's go to lagging measurement. This last list here, which is lagging, would be after the fact, right? Like things you're trying to produce. And you can tie these together as you see. Again, I'm not saying you need to measure all these. I'm saying pick like three. Start with one. Find a way to do it. Whether you're using a system like Captello, whether you do it in Excel by yourself, whether you can leverage your CRM, whether you're using a lead retrieval that you can connect to this here. However, just find a way to get going. So let's go lagging. I obviously think MQL to SQL, right? Going, that is a conversion that you are seeking and looking for, and a measurement that you should potentially take a look at, right? Opportunities created from event leads. That's a big one. Pipeline generated. Now, the next one touches in this. It's revenue influenced, which is tying now back to what Coty said about qualified touch points. And this gets back to this concept of tagging. I think in your CRM, you should have this event tag. I can't do it personally myself. I'm not very technical, but having some kind of tag that allows you to understand that you had a decent touch point with these people, right? And that then allows you to understand how their revenue gets influenced. Pipeline movement. So sometimes you go to a trade show, an event, you have a really good interaction with somebody, and maybe they're in your pipeline already and they accelerate. How would you know that? But it is an effect of an event. It happens, right? These interactions matter. Upsell and cross-selling, really big at trade shows, right? When you're seeing your own customers. So that really affects your customer spending. That affects pipeline. So it's tough to just say pipeline generated, because I think people typically think lead at the event, opportunity comes from it, that creates it. And yes, it does. But also there are a lot of other things that are happening that create pipeline, that go into your pipeline from being at an event, like the few I just named. Do you have any good ones that maybe I missed on lagging at this point, after the fact, essentially, you think that people should be measuring?
Everything that you said is like totally on point in terms of lagging. However, it's the continuous measurement that can be hard. So I just wanted to add in that point of before you even get to the event, right? As you're in the event planning stage, determine with all of the right departments in advance how you want to measure, right? What are the metrics you want to measure, how you're going to measure those, and also the time frames. Is it going to be, you're going to look at, 30 days, maybe, or 1 or 2 weeks after? That's important, right? Because touch points within the first, day, honestly, is really incredibly important. But then what happens 1 week, 2 week, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and 12 months after, right? That you can closely measure the velocity in which the relationship happens after the touch point of the event, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's so often that we do the event, we give some basic reports, not basic, but we give the at a glance reports of the success, and then we're moving on to the next thing. And it's
Yeah.
not often that we are consistently going back to the departments and saying, hey, marketing, hey, sales, hey, executives, look at 6 months after this event, we've had 10 people that had qualified touch points at that trade show that have now converted. It may have been 6 months later, but they still were an important piece of that. So just to recap kind of what I'm saying, make a plan in advance of exactly what you're going to measure, how you're going to measure it, and when you're going to measure, how long you're going to bring that up.
All right. So I want to close off this measurement section. We just gave you close to 20 things that you can measure, right? Pre-event, at the event, also with a leading and lagging breakout. What I want to leave you with on the measurement piece is this. Really, what you're trying to uncover here is the revenue that you influence. At the end of the day, that is honestly what really, really matters. I know that there's company initiatives. I know that there are other things that are involved that are important, but the revenue that you influence is really, really important. Sometimes it's direct. Sometimes it's, a little sideways direct. Sometimes you just have an influence in it. But events do this in a lot of sneaky and different ways. And I think you need to be able to tracking and measuring to be able to identify it. The last point is a couple of weeks ago, I had John Seeds on, and he's the CMO of T-Tech Digital. And I really wanted to get the opinion of a CMO so that people can understand when it comes to alignment, executives, what they're looking for out of the event program, what matters, what's important. And he said something that I thought was really valuable in this conversation on measurement. He said, have an opinion on what the results mean. I love that because we were talking about measurement, and he said, have an opinion on what the results mean. So he's saying whether you're tracking leading and lagging, when you are bringing that up to executives or moving that up the ladder to whomever it is you give it to, have an opinion on it. You're the one doing the work. You're the one on the ground. So when you do the work, you have the privilege and the sort of nuance of understanding everything that's going on. Have an opinion on the data. That's something that he would be looking for. All right,
I just
we
wanted
got
to
about,
pause here. So
yep.
Gina put in
All
a
right.
good point, and this is a very common. She says this all sounds like great data, but if you don't have the bandwidth to do the measuring, how do you
Yeah.
suggest providing good data to support your budget requests? You are
Yeah.
not alone, Gina. This does happen a lot.
Yeah, Gina, great question, great thought. Look, it is the plight of the event marketer person. Most people that are corporate event marketers are under-resourced, overworked, don't have the time. They're drowning in work. They're busy, event to event to event. What I would tell you is this. You need more bodies, as you said. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
I don't have the answer to this, but I have a couple different suggestions, right? And this is from having this conversation with a lot of different people and talking into the ground. But every organization is different. But I think when you need to be going to the right kind of leadership and making your case, this is what we're spending. You know what we're spending. Are we really producing results? And that could be scary because if you're not producing results, it could be on you. And they're like, how do you not know? Right. And it could turn into a whole spiral conversation. But essentially, what you're trying to get at is if we're spending this money on all these events, it's a big spend. It's roughly 25% of total marketing spend. We need to be deploying a certain set of strategy that allows us to understand and measure and then turn results, right? So if you're going to the right executives or right leadership, they could be listening to this conversation saying, hey, I want to drive these results. I don't really see how I can at this point in time. So you're looking for an advocate. You're looking to get somebody that understands it's a big picture business conversation. Your trade shows and your events are a sales and marketing channel. They are a part of go-to-market, but are we really treating it that way? And if I'm given the resources, I can treat it that way. My next thing is, and this sucks, it's a really bad answer, but someone that's built a business from the ground up to a degree, sometimes you just got to do it. Sometimes you just have to find the time, do the effort, go the complete extra mile and say, screw it. I'm going to prioritize this over something else because I know I need to get there. Because the bottom line comes when that axe comes down to swing for geopolitical or market or shifts or business changes, if you don't have a business case, the axe comes your way to whether it's resources, your job, your department, who knows? We've all seen it happen,
Hmm.
right? But if you don't have the objective data to show that you are contributing to revenue, you are contributing to business initiatives, and you are measuring, it becomes very difficult to tell an executive in a story when they have a lot coming at them, which is what makes measurement important. And it also
Hmm.
makes your story behind it important, but a very difficult place to be in.
Gina, always feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to kind of give any specific advice based on the current operation and how you're set up. But it does come down to having the confidence and having the knowledge and how to speak to those executives and get that stakeholder alignment. But it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a
Yeah.
lot of time to get a seat at the table, to be heard, and to be able to show and prove the importance of that data.
I would also say just, I mean, we get it. We've had this conversation a lot. Like we understand the shoes that you are in and the work. And what I would say also is pick one. Like, let's say you're not measuring anything at this point in time. Pick one and just like guerrilla effort, get it done, right? Like just find a way to just start with one and see if you can start to measure and find a way. Because I think, Mandy wrote here, once you decide measurement is critical, you will find other things to shave off to make time for it. It is true. And I do think I didn't plan to talk about this a little bit, but like I do think this is the direction that events are going, right? Digital
Mhm.
marketing, the 2015 to 19 era of low click rates and digital marketing, it is so saturated. Those days are to a degree gone. That low cost click through, grabbing attention, Facebook, other places, some of that's gone, right? And events are really starting to stand out as a meaningful way to get real touch points and move your customer through pipeline, which means that executives are going to start waking up and asking for measured results from event programs. They already are. Okay. Interestingly enough, I
Right.
was listening to the Diary of a CEO. They had a CEO on recently, and
It's a
she's in
good
the fashion.
podcast.
Yep, she's in the fashion industry, and they just floated on this conversation, but she started talking about exactly what I just said. 2015 to 19, they could just press another $100,000 into Facebook and churn this out. And her board was telling her, pound money in there, pound money in there. And the host asked, well, what's the big difference between then and now? And she goes, well, we're not doing that. We can't, because the returns aren't there. The
Mhm.
costs are that much higher. And what they're doing is they're doing more face to face. They're doing more activation. They're doing more getting in front of their customer. So I just think it's trend that's here, it's coming, and it's going to happen, which makes measurement important.
All right, so we've got 145, so we've got
Sorry,
15 minutes left.
I'll
I want
hammer
to
through
rapid
this.
fire. We have so many ideas on how you can do more with less,
Strategy over
right?
spend. Yep.
Yep. So go for it. And if you guys
Let me
have
get
any
a
other ideas, please feel free to chime in what's been working for you and where you've cut back.
let me get a sip here. All right,
Get
strategy
ready.
over. Yeah, right. Here we go. No, so strategy over spend. Right. Some of these are tactical, some of these are a little higher up. So my one thing that I really love, and I talk about this a lot, what's happening at this show, right? Not all shows are created equal. The details of who is at the show, why they are at the show, who they are to you, it matters. And it should drive your spend and it should drive your strategy. Okay. Can't say that any more clear. Are you dealing with decision makers? Are you dealing with influencers? Are you dealing with partners? Are you dealing with a mix? You got to have a really good grip on what's happening at the show, what's happening, what's the ecosystem there. Don't trick yourself into thinking that there's more decision makers and buyers and things that there are. The show is what it is. And when you identify that, you can then spend and strategize as such. Second on my list, messaging. Messaging, I mean, face to face, branded experiences, events, trade shows, activations, anything. Get with your marketing team. What is the best messaging you got? What is the best direct to the point, fun, quirky, serious, cause, mission, whatever it may be? What is a message, a simple sentence or simple line that's going to do it? Really, really good messaging goes a long way at an event. Ask yourself this third here. What aren't your competitors doing for your audience? A lot of people go to trade shows because their competitors go. That's an answer. Why are you there? What are you doing? Because our competitors go. I hear it all the time. Makes sense. I get it. Nothing wrong with it. If that's the case, then let's kind of play one on one with your competitor. What are they not doing for your audience? They could be throwing the big party and have always done it. Don't throw the big party. They already do. Do something different. Find the area where they are not. Okay. My fourth here is customer curation. Be in tune with who they are. Do not be tone deaf, right? Understand who they are. There are such nuance to people, whether executives, male, female, engineers, HR, sales. You go on and on and on. Age demographics. Like, be very in tune to who your customer is. Like, our customer is event marketers, directors of events, event managers, VPs of marketing and communication. Like, we feel like we have a pretty good grip on who these people are. And there are nuances to them. There's things about them that are similar. They've seen certain things. They've shared certain experiences. When you know those things, you can curate the experience that you drive them. Do not discount it. It is a strategic move for your giveaways, your experiences, your engagements, the offer that you have for them. Everything that you plan, course, and map and do should come and stem from what I call customer curation. Coty, you gave me this one. I love this one. It is, and Coty does this for us and does a very good job. Pitch your own sponsorships. If the show that you're going to it doesn't have good sponsorships or has the blanket menu of nonsense, go to them and say, hey, I'll give you 15 grand for this. I'll give you 100 grand for this, but I want this. I want that. And what you're trying to do with that, and what Coty has done for us, is we're trying to seek what we believe to be value, meaningful touch points, and the ability to get in front of them.
Yeah, so just to touch on that, because
Go ahead.
I do think that this is an opportunity to make an impact by spending less sometimes, because
Yes.
you can totally skip the standard packages that they're setting with their prices, right? Because that's what they want to get. But if you look at the end of the day, what do you want, or what do you need, and how do you want to show up at that event? Customize what you can spend, what can you invest, and where do you think that you would make the biggest impact? We always love talking about this. We take our podcast on the road, right? So we collab with events and we put their logo on it and we share the content with them. And then we get really great content. We get to talk to who we want to talk to. So get creative. Is it access to the targeted list, right? I can't remember. I think it was Harry in the notes mentioned, it's very rare that we get access to the list of attendees
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
Maybe that's part of the negotiation, but maybe you don't want the entire list. Maybe you want those with a specific job title and ask for it. You don't necessarily want to be on their email marketing, but maybe you can get access to it to build your own custom campaigns and to have your own engagement.
All right. So
I
let's
just had
go.
to, I just had to talk
No,
about
you're
that. I
fine.
could talk
No,
about
it's great.
sponsorships all day long.
No, it's great. Number 6 here for me. And this is something that I love to do, that we at Rockway love to do with our customers when they come and work for us and we're talking about new concepts and activations or things that they're working on for trade shows or events, is tell a story at the event, right? And the way that you do this is pretty simple. It's asking yourself and going through simple exercises of saying, what's our value proposition to this audience? What's our differentiator to this audience? What is the problem that we solve with this audience? What are our initiatives with this audience, right? You're going through, how is their life easier after having worked with us afterwards? You're trying to find all the things that make you unique and make the reason that they come and buy from you. And then a lot of your answers in getting creative and telling a story lie inside of those, because that is the story that you're trying to tell them. You're trying to figure out how, if my customer is at A and I want to get them to, J, how do I get them there? And what's the delta between what do they believe here and what do I want them to believe, or what do I want them to know about us? And that's the story that you have to tell. But it has to be derived in something that matters. Value prop, differentiation, problem you solve, initiatives, point of view. You can go on and on. You got to ask yourself this stuff. You got to get with marketing. You got to have these conversations. 7, it's another one that we love talking about with our customers. And I find this one is often, we do an okay job, right? It's tough. Lead conversion best practice. So you go to the show, you talk to these people, you gather these leads. You need a software. You need a retrieval. You need to have speed to lead. You need to have follow-up tracking, right? You cannot waste these interactions. You cannot just go do the event, and then have it fall by the wayside and data dump a bunch of stuff to sales. You have to be following intricately up on these things, and you have to have a process. My eighth on this is game day playbook. I know there's a lot of event marketers here that are really good at this, and they prepare everybody and they tell everybody and they put it into 1, 2, 3 pagers. But things like scripts, having huddles on the show floor, making sure the initiatives and the goals and the alignment, important reminders, and just everybody that's coming to your trade show from your team, they need to understand the deal, right? What is going on? Why are we here? What are we aiming to do? You have to keep everybody focused. Very easy to get unfocused at a trade show with a group of people. Very easy, right? But when you're spending, I don't know, 50, 100, 200, 400, a million, can you really afford to not be focused? Can everybody there afford, like if your CEO showed up and people are just slacking off and no one knows the direction or what we're trying to accomplish or how many meetings we got booked that day or the scripts that we're using and what we're telling people and how when they come into the booth, we're trying to get them from here. Like people have to know all of this stuff. There needs to be a plan. Have a game day playbook and hold people that are there accountable to it. And if they don't want to be held accountable to it, then you don't have them come anymore. Then you go to their boss, supervisor, your leadership team and say, I don't want this person there. They're not contributing to what we're doing. We have a plan. We have a strategy. The event is fun. We love doing all the cool stuff that comes with events, but we're about driving results and we have a plan. You're either going to follow the plan or you're not. Anything I missed,
There's a
Coty?
couple other things to that. No, I think preparing your team to show up so that you get the most out of your investment is absolutely important. Going back to the brand story, the more you know your audience, the more you have a full fleshed out story that you want to tell will also impact how you can use fewer, smarter giveaways, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you don't necessarily want to. I think Mandy's in here talking about swag hounds, right? Well, those
No.
are inevitable, right? We get it.
Yeah.
But do you need to hand out pens, stress balls, t-shirts, whatever? But what's a better, more impactful way to do giveaways, knowing your audience and knowing how it ties into the story? So is it some sort of contest? Is it some sort of gamification to win something? Is it only qualified touch points that end up getting access to some exclusive swag, right? Really think through the giveaways.
Mhm.
Also, you don't always have to show up at the exhibit with an exhibit, right? Can you show up to the event but not actually be on the trade show floor? Are there other ways, other shows that you think, you know what, I'm not 100% convinced that our audience is there just because our competitors are there. Let's find a different way to show up. Can we host your own offsite dinner, right? You build a list of who you think is going to be there. You have your sales team reach out and you plan a small dinner offsite so that you can really get connected with the right people without even having to show up at the exhibit. And we haven't even gotten into this, but actually, when you do exhibit, how can you strategize your booth build to be more impactful without increasing costs?
Yeah, I mean, that stems back to when you're trying to get ready for a booth build and things like
Mhm.
modularity and weight and all those things. And I think you're,
Yep, custom
you know,
versus rental components,
yeah.
even, going digital with print materials. So planning within your booth, where are those, digital interactive components versus having a whole bunch of print materials that just gets
No.
tossed. It's also a
That's
sustainable component.
makes me think just on a tail end of this, where if you have multiple trade shows and you're really dependent on them and you go to 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 a year, I really love like a hybrid rental style
Mhm.
program because it allows you flexibility, allows you to move spaces, change sizes. It also allows you, your exhibit house should be allowing you to buy certain key assets, but then also utilizing those assets to adapt and evolve into different spaces and redesigning your spaces and changing things up. And it's like, that is, if you are not constantly changing things up and curating based on the results that you had and trying different things, showing up differently, putting out new messages,
Mhm.
I think those are all really key pieces to strategy over spend. Like I would challenge anybody here, if you had a certain spend at a certain show and you brought it to me, I think I could input more strategy for less spend and get you better results. I mean, I almost guarantee it. right? I almost feel like I guarantee it. Give me 2-3 hours and I think I could do it.
Kathy says here outside the exhibit hall, meeting space is key for us at large exhibits. Absolutely. Or large conferences. So
Yeah, I love
say,
that
for
one.
example, you do have to cut back. Maybe it's a smaller footprint and in the exhibit itself, but you utilize external space. Maybe you're negotiating your sponsorship to have more space outside of that, right outside that conference space. Or do both, right? Go big inside, go big outside, but make it cohesive. Tell a story. You know, those that are on the outside of your sphere can might not necessarily be drawn into the exhibit yet, but you're going to catch their attention outside of that hall. So I love that idea. Also, Mel said, don't confuse planning with strategy with complexity. Simple can
Yeah.
be smarter. Absolutely. Go be straightforward. Be very direct in what you want, what you're trying to accomplish, simplify. And the easiest and the best marketing campaigns out there and the way to tell a story is in just a few words or less.
Love it. Some great endings there. We'll close on that. Everybody, thank you as always. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for listening to us.
Love
Thanks
you
for
all
being a
so
part.
much.
Yeah. Thanks for being a part of what we're doing here. If you need anything, reach out to Coty, reach out to myself. Happy to help. Happy to be here. Have a great rest of the week. Adios. We'll see you later. Thank
Bye,
you so much.
everyone.